Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. My dear friend, Jaime Filer. Now, I know I describe a lot of my guests as my friends, but that's also the truth because a lot of my guests are actually my friends in person. Quick side note. I remember once having someone tell me, 2018, I think it was at a fitness conference, a speaker I knew, he said, the people you meet in your travels are not your real friends. Told me more about that speaker than it did about the statement. And nothing could be further from the truth. Many of my dearest friends, my kindred spirits, are people I've met in my travels. And Jaime Filer fits that description. The founder of Filer Fitness, you and your team, incredible background in education, degree in kinesiology, exercise physiology. You've presented at events like the Real Coaches Summit where we met, and we actually did a presentation together at this past summer's Toronto Canfit Pro Global Conference. It was really your presentation. I was just sort of along for the ride as it worked out, and you were the star. Don't challenge me on that. It's great to have you back.
Andrew, thank you. I don't know whether this has been recorded for YouTube, but I haven't stopped smiling. I just like being in your presence. So the fact that we get to riff just makes me so happy. Any excuse to talk to you.
Well, let's talk about something that appears in your media a whole lot, and that's anxiety. And now let's preface this by saying neither of us are mental health professionals. We know that.
Yep.
But at the same time, this is something that we see a lot. So from your experience, I would love to hear, let's start here. How does anxiety interfere with achieving fitness goals, especially, maybe your own personal experience or the clients you work with?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I don't think there's any area of the umbrella term fitness or wellness that anxiety doesn't have a choke on when it arises. Okay, let's just start with weight loss, right? It's the easiest one. Anxiety elevates cortisol, which leads to fat storage, right? Especially visceral fat. You hold on to weight, right? One of the main themes of at least our marketing is your body doesn't feel safe enough to lose weight when it's anxious, right? And then we all know that exercise helps regulate both stress and mood. Anxiety affects performance. If your nervous system is always in fight or flight, you struggle with recovery. HRV starts to deteriorate. Focus is impaired. I know that when I'm going through an anxious period and I try to do high intensity exercise, it's diminishing returns because my starting heart rate is in the 110s or 120s. So there's no way I'm going to be able to perform at a high level. As I mentioned, anxiety affects recovery. High anxiety, poor sleep. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Right? Elevated stress hormones, less effective muscle repair, more injury risk. Also, your mood isn't great. So how are you supposed to, right? I truly believe that when you're just in a better overall mood, recovery and performance are also enhanced. Should I keep going? Because appetite dysregulation, motivation to go to the gym, consistency suffers when you're anxious. Again, I got all day for anxiety.
It permeates everything. I mean, we've all experienced, and there's also going to be, a spectrum. I think very few things exist as a binary. They're more a spectrum. I think anxiety is a spectrum. Sure, there is the, what would be clinically diagnosed as a mood disorder versus just generalized, transient anxiety that we experience every day, right? And as someone who's sure, I've had anxious days, and I know how it's impacted lots of the stuff. The appetite dysregulation is an interesting one because it can go either way. I remember in the past, I'm much better, but younger days, you're dealing with a breakup or some sort of relationship turbulence, and all of a sudden, I have no appetite. I feel sick to my stomach. I have no appetite, right? Whereas other people, anxiety that sends them straight for the cupboard.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't know the neurobiology between people like you and I who are stress non-eaters versus stress eaters. Perhaps I look at us, right? We're in the service industry. We're helping. We're servants, right? So our brains, I'm guessing, probably go into problem-solving mode. So there's no room for sympathy or self-soothing, whereby other people, the stress eaters, are there's no problem to be solved here, or I can't see the problem to solve. So I'm just going to make myself feel better in this moment.
Now, the challenge I have to that is, what if the self-soothing goes in a different direction? I mean, like, I don't drink anymore, but I can certainly say that over the years, in the past, alcohol is a very popular and has been a short-term, very effective way to soothe anxiety. It doesn't play well, cascade out over the long run, the second order effects of drinking a lot of it for a long time. But so I'm almost of the thought that it's just the outlet. And again, like, I'm out of my depth in terms of what is going on there.
Yeah. I mean, it could absolutely be a coping mechanism. I think that something needs to be shut off in one way or another. Even problem solving is often a coping mechanism for not actually dealing with what you're feeling, right? Like, rather than going to problem solving mode, if Katie is upset, I could also just sit with her and hold her hand. But of course, I want to fix things, because that's also a version of self-soothing. It makes me feel better to fix. That might not be the answer. So I think you're totally right. And I think two things can be true. I think many things can be the antidote to anxiety. For some people, it's food, but again, could be alcohol, could be solving the problem, could be whatever.
Does this tie in with, something that you had messaged me before about, is masking perfectionism? Talk to me about anxiety and masking perfectionism.
Yeah. So speaking of mutual friends, I actually just presented on this topic specifically at Nick Lamb's Recovery and Sleep Summit. Because anxiety, it was, again, specifically because anxiety and recovery and sleep are so tied in to one another. But the issue is that anxiety, or rather, it was compliant clients might not be ideal clients, because their desire to get it right and be perfect actually comes from a place of anxiety and self-worth, and thinking of their life in terms of black and white, and not just, man, do I want to reach my goals, right? So they think I have to do this perfect, because if it's not perfect, my coach will reject me, because my father rejected me when I didn't do things perfectly, or I only received love and praise from my mother when I was compliant. And therefore, all I know is to be a human doing and not a human being. So these people, these clients, or just us, set impossibly high standards, or they procrastinate because they're afraid of failing. So their anxiety is actually just a mask of, I want to be perfect. And if I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's on the other side of that. I don't know. I'm going to collapse if I'm not perfect.
I've worked with a few clients where it seemed to cause them, I'll use the word distress, at the thought of disappointing me. And it's something, as a coach, at the moment I detect this sort of thing, I very emphatic and repeated the messaging, like, hey, I have no judgment or expectations whatsoever. You are not going to disappoint me. And my support, I've had clients who are worried that they thank me for continuing to work with them through their struggles. And I'm like, I have to make it very clear for the coaches listening, I can't stress this enough, that with clients that feel this way, I really stress their compliance. My support in continuing to work with them is not contingent upon their compliance with it, their results.
Yeah. And I think, perhaps if you're a bodybuilding coach, like a competitive bodybuilding coach with a clientele base who almost need to get it perfect for their sport, or you're an Olympic weightlifting coach or a powerlifting course coaching, there are specific metrics that literally have to be met. Like you do have to be perfect on competition day to get your Wilks score where it needs to be, or whatever. Okay, that's a different subset of the population. But for those clients who are like, I didn't check in this week because I wasn't motivated to go to the gym, you got to pull your hair out a little bit and say, okay, this is anxiety masking imperfectionism, or vice versa, right? They're trying so hard to be perfect, and when they don't get it right, they're anxious about it.
How do you get through to someone like that who's struggling right there? How do you make them feel safer?
I mean, again, this is one of those, is it beyond my scope to reassure them that I'm not their mother, and they don't need to earn my approval or my love or my respect? I think I think that's what you have to do, right? You emphasize and re-emphasize and you iterate and you reiterate that the love, I mean, or whatever word you want to use, but the love you have for them is inherent and not dependent on them getting it right. Say, listen, the fact that you sign up for the program, that was enough for me. Showing up at less than 100% is fine as long as you gave it your best. And I listened to a podcast last week that said there are 3 kinds of best. There's the best, right? Ronnie Coleman or Phil Heath or Sebum, the best in the world, right? That's just top tier. Then there's your best on your best day, your best look, your best whatever. What was that? So that's absolute, not relative. And then there's your best effort. So every time that I do a high rocks race, right? I can't get my best every time. I cannot hit a PR every time. But if I run a race and that was the best I had that day, that's enough. So I think reminding your clients that it's not about being Sebum's best or whomever, and it's not always about being your perfect version, but it's about giving your 100% on that day. That will eventually, they'll internalize that and they'll believe that they're enough.
Do you think that what people expose themselves to curate on their social media or what they react to, and therefore the algorithm feeds them, is a major amplifier or source of anxiety?
Yes. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a way around that. Sometimes when it comes to your self-worth, sometimes we feel better by seeing people who have it worse than us, right? Often we say, well, at least I don't XYZ, right? Okay, I can complain about knee pain, but again, I just ran a high rocks race. I see somebody with no legs doing burpees and I'm like, I'll be fine. I can handle my pain. So I don't think there's a happy middle ground, right? All we see on social media is everyone's highlight reel. But also if we only compared ourselves to people who had it worse, I don't know that we'd get anywhere, right? We'd be like, you know what? I can coast. I might be making XYZ figures or I might be in XYZ shape, but at least there's this happy middle ground that I don't even know that I've found it yet. But that phrase of staying in your lane, I think it's important to have people's highlight reels to look up to in a way of saying, wow, if they've been able to do it, right? Like I see John Goodman's success. And I don't say to myself, man, I will never get there. I'll say, wow, if it's possible for my Jewish friend from Toronto to do it, then it's possible for this Jewish girl from Toronto to do it.
And we had the good fortune of actually, John made the effort to come and hang out with us, took the train at CanFit Pro. He does it every year because I've spoken at CanFit the last 3 years, and every year he's taken the train and come and hung out, and we've walked around or grabbed lunch or something. So
yeah,
that's the kind of friend he is. So love John. Big shout out there. I was thinking about what you'd said about the comparisons. So, it takes a while, but I think if I look at Chris Bumstead, Sebum, as you've referred, I'm very much at peace at, I'm not going to compare myself there. I don't know if that's as easy for everybody. It may be different with women and men. I suspect there's at least some differences there with comparison.
Yep.
For me, the dysregulation comes mostly from what I call hijacking. Oftentimes it's socio-political talking heads, very, very loud, people who are participating, let's call it political or culture wars, that sort of stuff. And the moment that stuff starts showing up on my algorithm, I just hit the option. And this is a powerful option, is to, I'm not interested in this. Now, they're going to be a certain subsection are going to scream to high hell that, oh, you have what are the words that gets weaponized is privilege to blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, no. Nothing's entitled to hijack my mental health, emotional well-being. And I find that's actually a bully narrative. So I reject that narrative on its face, that anybody feels that they can pressure you into drinking from the fire hose of every ill and thing that's wrong in the entire universe. Because we're probably the second generation in to have access to that shitstorm of everything wrong in the entire world. Plus each person's curated, this is the issue that I care about most. You must care about this. And then 100 of those people, 100 different issues. That's going to create anxiety. So I actually do believe it's very powerful to hit the I mean, you can block shit if you want or what have you, but I find a lot of things just select, I'm not interested in this. And if you do that every time it shows up, the algorithm stops showing it to you. And that's extraordinarily effective. Yeah.
If we translate that, Andrew, into life in general, I mean, do you believe in the law of, I mean, to an extent, the law of attraction? Now, obviously, you have to do something in order to bring it closer to you, but do you believe
explicitly?
Okay.
I think in terms of the surface area of luck, you put yourself out in the universe to benefit from the luck. You also work really hard to acquire skills and accept opportunities, but the law of attraction, absolutely.
Okay. So why don't we also see the universe we currently live in the same as the metaverse? If there's something in real life you're not interested in that is stealing and pulling from your mental health and causing you anxiety, you have a choice in real life also to mute that thing or to hit the 3 dots and say, I'm not interested, or to literally unfollow someone in real life. The same way that social media can pull from your mental health and you have a choice to do something about it, you also have a choice in the real universe to not see those things. It's just that for some reason, we're pulled towards that toxic ex, or we're comfortable in that shitty job because at least it's a job, but we have so many options around us.
This episode is brought to you by Macros First. I've always struggled with nutrition tracking apps, even the slightest hassle or friction, and it breaks my habit. That changed with Macros First. When I tried it, I told my friend, the founder, Jacob, quote, this is, well, let's just call it a certain other app on steroids. It's the easiest app to use, and it has a free barcode scanner, which if you use tracking apps, you know this is a really big deal. I recommend Macros First to all my clients and friends, and even had them sponsor my 2024 conference. Here's an example feature I love: auto-calculate food portions. Let's say you've got 30 grams of protein left for the day and you're thinking, how much chicken breast do I need to hit that? In other apps, you're left guessing serving sizes, hoping you get close to your 30-gram goal. With Macros First, just tell it the target you want to hit and it tells you exactly how much to eat. No more macro Tetris. Other apps ask, how much do you eat? Macros First also lets you ask, how much should I eat? And while Macros First's premium version is incredible for any user, the basic version, which is nowhere near basic, is free to use. So you can go to either the Apple Store or Google Play to download. There's another thing that comes up sometimes in coaching conversations that I've experienced this, and it's from Brene Brown's work about shame triggers. And you could have the same individual. Oftentimes it's a family member. Sometimes it's a parent or a sibling or a close friend. And you realize that they're literally one of the most trusted ride or die, safest place with a lot of things. Yep. But there are certain things that are no-go zones, right? You don't bring certain things up. Stereotypically, and I think Brene has mentioned this in her books, there's, and with clients, definitely a lot of this, women in their sometimes 30s through 50s, mom's generation had a very different way of communicating about body fat percentage, and your value as a person and your leanness and some of the beliefs that get downloaded and passed down that I like to call artifacts, because I like people to realize that maybe this doesn't belong to you. Maybe this is something you downloaded from someone else and you've just held on to it for a long time. It's not as simple as saying no, but it can be tricky, but it's also not bringing, sometimes, quote, metaphorically, mom here will just see someone and make a comment. And I think that's a boundary discussion. Yeah. But oftentimes, and I've learned, I do not bring up certain topics with certain people in my life that I care about. Now, there's plenty of people, as you said, I've deleted. I've literally gone, I don't want this person in my world anymore. Happened recently. And I just decided I'm walking away from this relationship. I don't want this person in my life. And I did it silently. I didn't say anything. I just simply stopped interacting.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Less of this button, right? You know what? Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that there's nothing wrong. We say this to our clients specifically, especially around this time of year, around their family. They said, okay, I just found this out. I was last year's old when I learned this. Do you know the expression blood is thicker than water?
Yes.
Okay. Everyone assumes it means your family is the bond that you have with your family is thicker than your friends. The blood is that of like if you and I, Andrew, old school, we're having a sleepover party and I cut my finger and you cut yours and we become blood siblings. is thicker than the water of the womb. So it actually implies that who you choose to make a bond with is stronger than the familial bonds. And that was so powerful because, again, especially in the LGBTQ community, a lot of us have families that weren't okay with a choice we never made. So instead, we have to go find people who are okay with it and make those people our family. And if one day somebody says something off color or that they aren't okay with, cool, it's time to move on, time to mute, time to unfollow, time to block.
And I've got so many friends in life that are like family to me, treat me like family and vice versa. And my life is richer as a result of that, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
You can choose your family.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's go one more point that you made that I took in my notes. Talk to me about anxiety robbing you of your potential happiness.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I just heard an amazing quote about this, and it said, every hour you spend on yesterday is an hour you don't spend building tomorrow. And I think that pretty much sums up my philosophy on anxiety, especially because at the end of the day, anxiety is one of two things. If we look at it as a mathematical equation, it's either the difference between something that's happened in the past and the present, and you're reliving that, right? Like I said, you're spending an hour on yesterday. Can't change it. It's a fact. Also, right? If it happened and someone was writing a history book about Andrew Coates's life, yesterday happened. We can't change it. Also, if you've got anxiety about the future, okay, we have a lot of clients who come in and they get blood work. And then they're paralyzed between when they get the blood work and when they get the results of the blood work. And we're like, but what can you change? Nothing. So I don't want to say what's the point in worrying, because I've struggled with anxiety, but the truth is, what's the point in worrying? If there's something you can do about it, then action alleviates anxiety. Take control over that thing. But if there's something you can't do about it, what's the point in worrying about it? No anxiety.
You remind me of something, and I'll occasionally mention like Alex Hormozi, because Alex has, I mean, shit, he has got some bad takes, but he also sometimes gets to the core of some interesting concepts. And I know him and Layla, his wife, they'll often talk about through the lens of business and getting to work about stuff, but I think this applies to life. It could be about fitness, could be about nutrition. Is if you're experiencing anxiety, there's a gap between your skill level, your knowledge level, and the task.
Yeah.
And I guess that can really apply almost anywhere. It's you're overwhelmed by the scope of a task. Like I said, you don't have the skills. So any thoughts on bridging that gap?
I will see your Alex Hormozi take and raise you an Alex Hormozi take. He says sadness is a problem to be solved. As soon as you start seeing your sadness like a problem rather than a feeling, and again, say what you want about him and Layla and their kind of one track, singular focus, XYZ, but it also shifts things for you. You're like, wait, again, I'll just see this as either something I can do something about, and then I will cut the shit and go do the thing, even if it's a tiny baby step that makes me feel better, or I will realize there's nothing I can do, and therefore there is no point in worrying about the thing. But any problem has a solution. You just have to spend enough time or ask enough people or do enough research to find that solution.
One more thought on this. Now, we're definitely dancing all around the edges of like scope here, but what about your thoughts, layman's thoughts about the people who, because we're seeing this far more, who their mental health diagnosis labels become part of their identity?
Yeah. I might even just jump in at this point. Okay. So this is great. We did have a client who, and I guess, I can just say my opinion, not like a blanket statement, but we had a client who we knew was anxious. I mean, most people don't come into our coaching program unless they have anxiety. So she had anxiety and it was getting in the way of tracking the macros and doing the workouts, right? She was a perfect candidate. And then she went for the official testing and Andrew, she completely shut down once she got a diagnosis.
Mm.
But we were talking like 12 weeks into the program that she signed up for because she knew it. But then as soon as she was labeled generalized anxiety disorder, I think we got maybe 6 more weeks out of her before she's like, I just can't do it anymore. And we're like,
and
So
neither
I-
of us would ever dare invalidate these diagnoses or the severity of these things.
in fact, I mean, she got the stamp. She did get the validation. Now it was almost like official. And we're like, but what's actually changed? Nothing
Oh.
except someone with a lot more years of schooling setting.
And I mean, I have a theory, a very strong feeling on this, and this is not to address this clinically, but it's about anybody who accepts any label. And some people are going to bristle at the suggestion of like victim narrative, but I do believe a lot of people find it easier. There's less pressure on them, and maybe it alleviates anxiety. Maybe this is the whole point of it, to be granted a label or to choose a label for themselves in many different domains in life that absolves them of responsibility, control, and therefore takes the pressure off. And the example I've used, forgive me listeners if you've heard me say this before, I think this shows up in New Year's resolution behavior. The stereotypical person who's been struggling with their weight, their metabolic health, they're concerned about it. And they're getting messaging from different quarters of the internet, the shame-based, if you want to end to the extreme, you have to suffer, blah, blah, blah. The type of people who think that, using GLP-1 agonist medication drugs is cheating. And then the other side of the spectrum, which is equally unhelpful, which is there's nothing unhealthy about being, categorically morbidly obese, right? There's no long-term health risks. And we no longer tolerate that ideological lie. We know that's nonsense. It's rubbish. I don't entertain it. I don't entertain the type of people who peddle this sort of crap.
Yeah.
But there's obviously nuanced middle ground. I recently had episodes with Dr. Carl Nadolsky, Spencer Nadolsky, a bunch of other people, and we actually get into the depth on that. But I think that there are people out approaching New Year's with a subconscious intention to prove that they're not the kind of person that can do this. So I think there's a skill gap. I think that they jump in, they try to do too much exercise, they try to white knuckle the nutrition, overly restrictive, clean eating behavior. They may be able to get through 4 to 6 weeks of it. It's kind of terrible. And they don't really know what they're doing when it comes to exercise sides. They don't have the support, which I think is a really big key. I don't like pushing and endorsing coaching too aggressively, but these are the people that would benefit a lot.
Sure.
And then after a while, they quit. And then they can say to themselves, see, I tried. I'm just not the kind of person that can do this. And I see this cycle perpetuate. And there has been this creeping discomfort, emotional discomfort with their lack of effort. There's the physical concern over their health, but there's this emotional discomfort about their effort. And I think that gets alleviated when they prove to themselves, hey, I've generated evidence that I just can't do this, until it creeps back up, and New Year's becomes a trigger. And it's a metaphor that shows up in other domains. So that's my theory, and I've seen it play out.
I think this, so another way of saying is that people tie their identity to their labels, right? And I mean, you could say it about, you could throw that back in my face. You're like, Jamie, that's all you talk about. Absolutely. It's also marketing for me, though. It's not necessarily me tying my identity to it. It's marketing almost for the purpose of inclusivity, not exclusivity, not removing myself and saying I am this. It's, hey, if you are also like me, let's do it. But here's where it becomes a problem, at least for coaches. And again, I'm going to use me as the example. When people are like, I'm just not a morning person. I say, I love this. Okay, curious. I am of what? If you were to give this color, what is this? And they're like, white? How? A little Caucasian. Okay. And I'm married to a woman. Again, say what you want, but I don't feel like I had a choice. These are things that are just inherent about me. I'm white. I'm gay. Your choice to not do shit in the morning is a choice. I am gay and I am not a morning person are not the same. So you got to stop. One is actually my identity. The other is a choice to not like getting up before the sun. That's the easiest way I have to explain it to our clients. You've tied this so much to your identity, but is it actually your identity or is it a behavior? Because, I mean, Andrew, you could marry a man And that would be a behavior, but it's absolutely not who maybe he has great military benefits. Who knows? I don't, right? But that's just, we all know that's not who you are. But that's when these people become dogmatic about their behaviors and have internalized them as an identity.
That's fantastic. This episode is brought to you by Just Bite Me Meals. I work long days and I won't compromise my client experience or sacrifice my workout, sleep, or nutrition. So I needed a quality and reliable meal prep service so I could save time on cooking and shopping and have more time for the stuff that matters. Net out the cost of groceries and the service isn't as much as you might think, and regular impulsive food delivery apps, eating out, that costs way more anyway. I get more meal variety and less dishes to clean, and I've been referring clients to Just Bite Me Meals for a long time, and I recently started ordering myself. Food is great. The beef brisket tacos are my favorite so far, and there's a lot of menu choice. Your calories and macros are listed. The portions are great. You can order custom meals. They deliver to your door, or you can pick up from their storefront. And I'm sorry to listeners outside of Alberta, but Just Bite Me Meals is currently just in Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, and Fort McMurray. Ordering from Just Bite Me Meals made my life easier instantly. And you can get 10% off on all your orders using my code, Andrew Coates Fitness, all caps, on their website. That's Andrew Coates Fitness, all capitals, or go to the link and the code in the show notes. So that is a fantastic segue into the next thing we were going to talk. So this is absolutely sort of a throwaway question. We're gonna have a little fun, but
let's do it.
I had tagged you in a Zach Tallender post where he was stitching a young woman who was talking about lesbian specific exercises. Okay, so this is the throwaway. Are there lesbian specific exercises for muscle hypertrophy that uniquely your biology, your physiology somehow responds differently to?
Yeah, again, I think loading and unloading a U-Haul. I think carrying the weight of the patriarchy. I think holding all of the letters of the alphabet on our shoulders are pretty lesbian specific. But other than that, I can't see anything that you can't do.
So, in all seriousness, do you find there are any unique considerations with the population that you work with for habits, behavioral psychology, and culture, community norms around fitness and nutrition?
So this is where I think there's a difference between almost like satire marketing and then real considerations in your marketing. You know, you could have someone a different coach who only does trauma-informed weightlifting for veterans who struggle with CPTSD, right? I don't see how that's different. There are considerations that coach is going to take into account when training veterans and what their bodies and their minds can handle, right? How is that any different than us training veterans with CPTSD, lesbians with anxiety? Different exercises? No. How they are coached? Absolutely. There's probably a lot more empathy, right? Like we talked about, that whole progress versus perfection is going to be reinforced a lot more with our community. We're going to definitely take into account sensitivity. You know, one of our first questions is always, what are your pronouns? Not every coach, and I don't think that necessarily has to be a 2025 thing. I just think that's an our coaching thing. So yeah, the exercises and the diet are not different. Lesbian physiology is, I'll be the first one to say that, but coaching methodology does have to be different for different groups.
I think that makes sense. And again, we were sort of chuckling about this off air, so it was sort of a fun way to segue into this. Let's see. Let's do this one. One of the really common themes I extrapolate from your media, I don't think it's on the surface, but it's definitely embedded there, is the balance between work and actively living life. How do you prioritize both of those, make them work? Or
love that. How do you prioritize two things? Great question.
Or is social media a bit misleading in that it just glamorizes the highlights?
Great question. I would say, and I think we actually talked about this during our speaking engagement at CanFit. It was that only one thing can be prioritized at a time. I think, call me old fashioned, you can only have one best friend. You can't have your work best friend and you get one best friend in this lifetime. So there's work-life integration and there's work-life harmony. There will be periods. I mean, right now, off air, we talked about the ebbs and flows of online training. I told you that October was an ebb for us, but it meant that I had to try harder. Well, what do you think? I can't juggle. I can't have 3 burners all on high. I can't have my physical fitness and my marriage and my work on high. October was an ebb, and I put all of my resources, my time, energy, attention into work to try and bring it up for November, right? Once we get that Black Friday promo going and people realize there are only 2 months left until January and XYZ, I can pull up on the accelerator a little bit and then move or shift gears back towards physical fitness, my marriage. So I think setting boundaries with each burner is important, and just knowing that at any given time, you might be able to have 2 burners on high, but any more than that, and you're lighting your house on fire. And so knowing your limits, not burning the candle on both ends is really important. And again, recognizing that no matter how amazing you are, you cannot do everything at 100%. This almost brings the entire conversation full circle. I know that at the same time, I will never be a perfect wife, perfect CrossFit athlete, and a perfect CEO. Because if I was a perfect CEO, I'd be an awful, awful wife, right? Because all of my resources would go into being my best CEO or the best CEO, and I wouldn't have anything left to give to the other areas. So what you see on social media is the different seasons. I might be in a season where I'm doing my best wife. Next year, beginning of the year, it might be all in on Hyrox or CrossFit or my business, who knows? So I think that if you see someone who seems to have all of their burners on high, either their house has burned down and they're just not showing you, or it's only a matter of time before their house is going to burn down.
And I'm very confident that you're not suggesting the other burners are off. There's got to be a maintenance volume.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're on like broil. Yeah, we don't just completely neglect our marriage, and we don't completely neglect, especially in this industry, we don't completely neglect our health, especially that, because if you don't have your health, how would you ever keep your company, your business, your clients alive, or keep healthy even if you're not in a marriage, like just healthy relationships in general won't be healthy unless you are.
This is interesting because then I think about, like, I haven't been in a serious relationship for at least a few years now. And certainly with the pace and everything I manage, I do realize that it would be very hard to fit something like that at the current pace that I keep. And
yeah,
you understand that there are trade-offs in life, and, and I challenge, this is getting a little existential, but challenge some of the traditional narratives about, what life is supposed to offer. And I'm very fulfilled by it. But, again, there are trade-offs. So, and I'm at peace with that.
It's so funny because we did, I think I asked you this, it can fit. And I'm like, honestly, you'd have to find someone that could keep up with your travel schedule. Honestly, because I see it and I love, it doesn't even look like hustling, right? From the outside when I see your life. But when you told me everything you were doing in the fall between your concerts, your speaking engagements, and just going to different summits and seminars, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Until he's like a little more grounded, literally more roots and not traveling as much, it would be hard unless she came to everything with you.
Yeah. So, and I think that ties into the next thing I want to ask about is how important it is to have an aligned and supportive partner. Katie works with you, right?
Yeah.
And we've mentioned the Hormozis, and they're, I'll go on a little side quest.
Yeah.
This gets relationship advice. Don't take relationship advice from me, please, for the love of God. I'm not an authority on this, but I tend to think about relationships in sort of 3 buckets. And I think where people get it wrong is I think the ultimate is just being in a relationship versus being by yourself. I think if you find a partner that is incredibly supportive, I think one of the Hormozis said about the other one is, I think as Alex said about Layla, find someone who has a bigger vision for you than you do. Now, again, they've made a brand out of their relationship, and I'm sure they're fairly open about their unique approach to life and philosophy, but they seem to be genuinely very supportive of each other, very aligned with each other, and they seem to both support each other very aggressively. Great. Okay.
use that as a metaphor or whatever. I don't think everybody's going to be like that. But if you find, you know, those people we know that they've been happily married for 50 years, they're still in love. You don't always see all the fights and the conflict. A lot of it has to do with how people actually fight and how they resolve conflict. But generally, we can tell the difference between these like really happy relationships versus the people you're just around enough where they're always yelling at each other. And like, I just have an aversion to that. Oh my God. Like if I had to live in the same house as that person, that is like the default setting. Like you hear maybe it's like, you just see it out in public. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
that to me is a horror movie. So I think the thing that people get wrong is they think that, well, the ideal is the best thing. And then it's settling for whatever, bullshit relationship. And then being by yourself is the worst. I actually think that being in a terrible relationship that you're stuck in is the worst. And I think that being at peace and having flexibility and freedom in your life and fulfilled, I think a big key to that is, I think a lot of people aren't fulfilled by what they're doing professionally and personally. And therefore they try to fill that up entirely with a relationship. And I don't think that can actually make up for what you're not fulfilled by in life.
Right.
Anyway, there's my relationship framework, take it or leave it. I think, and I always challenge myself on this. This also my own narrative. So have I adopted a narrative that suits my circumstance to make me feel better about it? Always challenge yourself on this shit. Anyway, back to the question, because I've been doing too much talking. How great is it to have a supportive partner like Katie? Shout out Katie. Katie's amazing.
She is amazing. It's funny because we were talking about this. Because I used to, and it also goes back to anxiety. I used to cause both of us another anxiety because I did want us to be Alex and Layla. I wanted her to be the COO to my CEO or vice versa. And I was trying to fit a round peg into a square hole because Katie has a myriad of strengths and skill sets and personality traits that people would kill to have, but she's not an entrepreneur. And the truth is, that's not why I married her. I would hate to be married to someone exactly like myself. I would drive myself crazy. But she is literally the world's best cheerleader. She's the world's best challenger. She doesn't have these crazy elaborate visions, but if I have one, she will be the first, and I mean this in the most loving way, to poke holes in it. And she's like, I love you. Great idea. But practically speaking, right? She's so pragmatic. She's so grounded. So I think it's important to have a supportive partner, but I don't think you need someone with the same type of drive as you. I think that will get you in a lot of trouble. I think you should know where your partner's strengths are. Are they a quarterback? Are they a cheerleader? Are they happy to be on the sidelines competitively spectating for you? So as long as they're fans of what you're doing, they don't necessarily have to be on the field with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to your point about the Hormozis, I think we can all too often look at the fairy tale of other people's story.
Yeah.
And I think the Hormozis, if you actually pay a lot of attention to a lot of their media, they're more transparent about the way that they deal with stuff. But I don't, first of all, they're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Most people don't actually pay that much attention to them. And I think that we often see, I can't count the number of people that I know, let's say in the broader fitness space, let's say personally, that it all looks super great on social media. All of a sudden you find out that they're breaking up, they're divorcing, they've separated. Happens all the time.
Yeah. Right. Because something happened that wasn't, they say, don't marry people for what they could be. Just marry them for what they are. Fall in love with them for who they are.
So this episode's turning into a relationship episode.
It's a little bit.
I think it comes back to the kind of the anxiety stuff about like what you're consuming and seeing. And if you're comparing your relationship, the ebbs and flows, the imperfections, but your commitment to this person to somebody else's like fairy tale existence. And all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, the fairy tale's been shattered because you just did not see all the other crap that was going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I always talk about, and I'm so sorry. I want to find a way to bring this back to the listeners and everything, but I think there are two ways to go about the beginning of a relationship. It's either rocky up front and you get all of your shit out of the way early on, or you end up finding out later, right? Like, everyone talks about the honeymoon phase. Katie and I didn't get that. We literally didn't get a honeymoon because as soon as I applied for my green card, we were landlocked. So we had tickets to Israel that we had to get refunded because I couldn't leave the US. We didn't have any money because I drained all of it paying for an immigration lawyer. She was living off student loans. Then I decided it would be really smart to start my own business rather than working for someone else. So even then it was ebbs and flows. So I think another thing is, honestly, I would get the hard part out sooner rather than later.
Instead of kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. We can tie this into another post that you had. Quote, your relationship is making you fat. What's going on here?
Okay. Now we're good. We're going back to your listeners. I had a client describe this as, she said she was happy fat. And I said, oh, can you tell me more? And she's like, oh yeah. Like my partner and I got fat together. We just got like really comfortable and we love eating out like 3 days a week. And we love ordering in and we love Uber Eats and we love ice cream together. Right? Again, these people are not emotionally eating. Well, they are, but it's like happy emotions, not anxiety or sad emotions. So the point about that post where your partner is making you fat, it's like you guys are enabling each other. You take on the same habits. I saw something forever ago that said, when a man and a woman get together, the man always ends up losing weight because he's eating her portion sizes, but she ends up gaining weight because she's eating his type of food. And I'm like, yeah, makes total sense. But we see often whether the relationship is good or not good in our coaching program, most people end up gaining weight for the same reason, the emotions behind the relationship.
Do you think it's all bad?
Do you think it's all bad?
Yeah.
Like the bad weight? What do you mean? Say that different.
Let's say if, a couple does exactly that. They're in a relationship and they're gradually gaining weight over time and the relationship is contributing due to the habits. They're staying in, they're watching more TV, et cetera. They're not out in, the behaviors that you might engage in if you were seeking a relationship, which I think underpins all of this. And they're not actively trying to let's say, look their best, attract someone. I'm sure it's a part of it.
Yeah.
But, let's say two people are happily going and eating and they're progressively gaining weight. Do you think that's a bad thing?
I don't, until it becomes a bad thing. Nothing is a bad thing until it becomes a bad thing, right? Like when I was at the tail end of my eating disorder at 98 pounds, right? It's only a bad thing when it becomes a bad thing. So it becomes a bad thing when those people are also not having sex, at least not with the lights on because they don't like how they look out of clothes, right? You might be really comfortable and gaining weight on the couch, enjoying, but then what happens when you go back to the bed? Now it's not happy fat anymore, right? You might be huffing and puffing when you go to work and you're taking the stairs instead of the elevator, right? The weight is only a problem when it becomes a problem. So I'm not saying there's an issue with the relationship. It goes back to the behaviors. We just need to change something that you're doing so that you're more confident, you're more comfortable, especially in your relationship.
What about if one person decides they're not happy with it and wants to change they want to lose weight, they want to, let's say metabolic health is a concern at this point.
Yeah.
And then they want to do something about it. And the other person isn't ready for change.
Oh, this is the hardest part of the sales call, Andrew. And it's typically, so we pre-frame our sales call. Do you have a significant other? Yes or no? Does your significant other know you're on the call with us? Yes or no? Do you think they'd be a champion of you doing this? Do they know how much pain you're in, or whatever word you want to use? And as soon as they say, no, they don't know that I'm on this call, I'm like, the unimportant part is that I've probably lost the sale. The important part is that they won't get the help. I think a lot of partners don't talk to one another about either them being self-conscious because they will, especially, it's been a minute since I've been in a guy girl relationship, but there's a really strong element of if you get hotter, you're going to leave me. If you start changing your habits and you gain confidence, you're going to realize that you're out of my league, right? That stuff starts to come up. So when one person wants to change their habits, if the other one doesn't, I think number one, there are two fundamentally different core values at play. How is health not a core value of the person that you said you were going to spend the rest of your life with? But also, honestly, maybe unless therapy is involved and that other person gains confidence not related to, well, we're equally as unhot, I guess we're just a perfect match. There's going to be an issue. It will eventually tear them apart for one reason or another.
I wonder if there's an element of almost a sense of violating the trust of the original unspoken agreement that we are two people who are in this place or on this trajectory, and then one person fundamentally wants to change. Is it about the physical change, or is it about the fact that they are all of a sudden a different person?
That one. 100. Again, this goes back to the identity shift, right? I married Katie based on the identity that I saw at the time. But if she all of a sudden, I don't know, takes up drinking or drugs, and I said, wait a second, this is not the same person, right? Or something, whatever it is, fundamentally changes her personality. It might be time to reevaluate the relationship, which I think works out better and healthier in the long run, because now that person is still allowed to change and grow, whether it's for better or for worse. And the other person, doesn't have to hold them back or crab in the bucket mentality. And also, if you don't like it, don't stay with it, right? It goes back to mute, unfollow, block, not interested, right? She takes up drinking. That is a massive not interested from me. I don't, it's expensive. It turns you into someone different, right? Like, I have the right to say, just don't like that behavior.
You and I created a far more, honestly, I think a far more cohesive episode than we set out to. I hope everybody really enjoyed this, like, deep dive into anxiety and relationships, even though, as I said, I am profoundly unqualified to talk about relationships. So again,
this entire thing
caveat.
out of both of our scopes, Andrew. Like, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know.
And it's like, you can't couch the social media posts with every possible caveat when you say something. But you know, with a podcast, I think we could do it. So if anybody's like, man, well, guess what? Why? Just worst case scenario, you just got to tag along. Well, you know, two old friends actually like just riffed and caught up. So thanks for being a part of this, everybody. I appreciate you guys. I hope you're actually enjoying the cross section of different episodes that I've had. If you, well, first of all, Jamie's been on before. So episode 306, I don't always remember the numbers, but if you want to go back and listen to more, the coaches, especially on Jamie's career side of stuff, episode 306, about 100 episodes ago. But please go follow Jaime. So it's Jaime.
Correct.
Filer. So Jaime Filer Fitness, Jaime. I know Jamie's who spell it either way. And so go check out Jamie's stuff there. And guys, thanks for tuning in, Jaime. Always appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Take care of yourself.